is the link between Christ and the Old Testament book of First Chronicles. Hi, I'm Ken Godevanis, and this is Digging for Scriptural Gems. Today, we conclude our introduction to First Chronicles, looking at any reference or connection to Christ, the keys to the book, key verses, key chapter, and a quick survey. For starters, you may remember that we discussed the description of David as a type of Christ when we first looked at the introductions to 1st and 2nd Samuel. Well, the Davidic covenant of 2 Samuel 7 is found again in 1 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 11 to 14. Solomon, David's son, fulfilled part of that, but the part of the promise of the eternality of David's throne can only point to the coming of the Messiah. In chapter 2, when we get to the sons of Jacob or Israel in verses 1 and 2, they're listed in the generally accepted birth order. But in verse 3, when the author covers the genealogy of those sons, he begins with the sons of Judah, because the monarchy, the temple, and the Messiah will come from this tribe. Consider also this interesting fact. The books of Chronicles are the last books of the Hebrew Bible, and thus the genealogies therein, chapters 1 to 9 in 1 Chronicles, are a preamble to the genealogy of Christ in the first book of the New Testament, Matthew 1, verses 1 to 17. According to the New English Translation editors, the key verses of 1 Chronicles are chapter 17, verses 11 to 14, part 1, or the set 1, and then chapter 29, verse 11 is the other one. These are well worth reading on your own. Chapter 17, 11 to 14, and chapter 29, verse 11. The first reference covers the promise that an eternal kingdom would be established through his descendants, namely Christ. Through David's descendants, namely Christ. The second reference is that David, just before he dies, blesses the Lord and ascribes to him greatness, power, glory, victory, and majesty, and everything that is in the heavens and earth being part of his dominion, over which he totally exalts himself as ruler. Key verses: the promise of an eternal kingdom and ruler, Christ. Key verse near the end, David ascribes all these wonderful, majestic things to God, to the Lord. The key chapter is the 17th one. It is pivotal for the book as well as the rest of scriptures, as it records again, in addition to 2 Samuel chapter 7, the Davidic covenant. And in verse 14, God promises David that he will settle him through his ultimate offspring, Jesus Christ, in his house and in his kingdom forever, with his throne being established forever. Now, surveying the book, we find it retraces Israel's history up to the return of captivity to give the people returning a divine perspective of their past. It does this primarily through the life and reign of David. Chapters 1 to 9 cover his royal line, and chapters 10 to 9 his reign. Less attention is paid to the northern kingdom of Israel. The book shows God at work in electing and preserving a people for himself from the beginning of human history to the period after the Babylonian exile. The genealogies demonstrate God's keeping of his covenant. With special attention to the tribe of Levi, the book also emphasizes the priestly perspective. But First Chronicles completely omits David's struggles with Saul, his 7-year reign in Hebron, his various wives, Absalom's rebellion, his sin with Bathsheba. The book is written instead from a positive perspective to emphasize God's grace and forgiveness so that the people would be encouraged as they returned from captivity. Only chapter 10 is given to the reign of Saul. The book emphasizes David's deep spiritual commitment, courage, and integrity. It highlights his desire to build a temple for God, although he does not get to do that. It also covers his sin in numbering the people when he should not have done so. And it ends with his beautiful public prayer of praise and the accession of Solomon to the throne. I hope you'll join us next time as we dig right into the first verse of the first chapter of First Chronicles. In the meantime, if you like what you're seeing and reading and hearing, please indicate so on the video you're watching. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Digging for Scriptural Gems. But most importantly, keep on studying God's Word. You'll find it fascinating. Till next time.